Cool, so now that we know what a variable is, let's go back to those strings which we've also been using already and, look at them in a little bit more detail. So the strings is the first data type that we're going to learn about, and strings are what we use to contain character or sentences or just general text information. They're very usable and very widely applicable, and you can basically contain a lot of information inside of them. The only thing is it's always going to be text, and the way that we define a string, like we also talked about previously, is either we have single quotation marks around or we have double quotation marks around. If we have a single and a double quotation mark, this doesn't work. To define a string, we have a starting indicator, which is either going to be a single or a double quotation mark, and then we also need to have the same ending indicator, which is going to be another quotation mark, either single or double, depending on what we use to start it. So if we have this, for example, and I just rerun the code again, we're going to see I actually print out this double quotation mark inside, because this is now contained within this string here. Our string is defined to begin with the first quotation mark here and the second single quotation mark here. And now this is just part of the text. And if instead I put double quotation marks around like this, well, now we again have a problem, because we start with a double quotation mark. Now this is going to be part of our text here, the single quotation mark. Oops, I didn't mean to flip those around. And now we've reached another double quotation mark, which means our string has ended. And now we start a new string with a single quotation mark, but we never finish it. So we can see here there's a red squiggly line. If we put our mouse over it, we can see that it's telling us we're missing a closing quote. So if I put another quotation mark here, I flipped those around. So if I put another quotation mark here, then it closes it properly. I think I flipped these around at some point, but now we're starting with a single, then we have a double, then we have a double, and then we have a single, and then we have two doubles here. Now if we try to run this, well, nothing much is going to change because there's really nothing extra contained inside here. The only difference is that we now basically have something contained within quotation marks. So what happens now if maybe you want to use like an apostrophe, or you want to use quotes like we did in this case inside of your text? Because we talked about previously that you should also be consistent with either using single or double quotation marks. So let's say that I want to spell out here isn't, but I'm using single quotation marks. Well, this is going to be weird because we've basically indicated that our string is ending here. Then we have a t, which we know previously is now going to refer to a variable t, which is undefined. You can see here an unresolved reference to t, which means that the t variable, it's trying to look for the t variable because it's not contained within a string, is undefined. And then we just have another kind of lone single quotation mark here. So what we can do is something called an escape character, and that's going to be a backslash. And so what this backslash means is that the next character should not be treated as like a special character. So for example, the apostrophe should not be treated as a way to end the string, but rather it's just going to be a character that we want to use. So in this way, we can spell out isn't by using this special backslash here, which is just going to indicate that this next character that we have here should be treated differently than the way that it normally does. Now if we have double quotation marks, we can do a very similar thing if we want to say hello world, but if we want all of this to be in quotation marks, then all that we have to do here is just put a backslash and a backslash to indicate that these should just be treated as characters themselves, and then we can print it out and have quotes here like that. Now there are a lot of other cool things that we can do with strings though. For example, we can join two strings together. So we can have one string that we're going to store in a variable called hello, which is going to be hello. We're going to have a second string that we're going to store in a variable called world, which is going to contain world. And now if we want to have hello world, we can join these two strings together by doing hello plus world. Now what this does is this basically takes the value here that we have here and the value here, and if the plus operation is defined for these two values and they're compatible with each other, then depending on what our values are, it's going to do this plus operation. Now for numbers, we probably kind of know what this plus means, but for strings, what it means is join them together. So we have the first value contained inside this hello variable, which if we look it up is this string here, hello. And then we have the second value that we have in this world variable, which contains the value world. And so what it's going to do is our value here is just going to take this, and to the back of this, it's going to put this. So if we run this, we can see that they've just been kind of stuck together. And we can't just do this once, we can actually do this many, many times. So let's say I want to have a space in between here. Well, one thing that I can do is I can add a space here, like this, or I can add a space here, like this. But either of these methods are not very nice because now we kind of have to know, did we put a space and where did we put it? And so a better way of doing this is just to have another plus here, and then we have a space, just the space character contained inside. So we're going to take our hello value, and then to the back of that, we're going to add a space, and to the back of these things together, we're going to add this world. And so if we run this, we can see now we're going to get back the exact same thing that we had before. But now we've used multiple variables, and we've joined this information together using this plus operation. This string concatenation is what it's actually called. Now this is obviously extremely useful, but there are also some other cool things that we can do with strings. One of these things is called slicing. So let's say we have a string, but we only want to use a subsection of it. Let's say we have a very, very, very long piece of text, and we just want to look at, what's contained, like what are the first 5 characters? The first 5 characters contained inside this maybe super long piece of string, just so that we can get an understanding of like what's actually contained inside if we're reading it maybe from a file or something like that. So what we can do is something called slicing. And we're going to use print here, but I'll show you in a second how we can also use this in different ways. And if we put square brackets at the end, then we can actually refer to specific indices, or what they're called. So we can either refer to one individual index, and in programming we always start counting at 0. So in this case, our hello world variable, which we're referring to here, contains hello, so H-E-L-L-O, it's going to be 5 characters, it contains a space, and then it contains world, which is going to be another 5. So in total it has 11 characters within it. Now if we want to look at, for example, the first character, then we're actually going to look at the index at position 0. Since programming, we start counting at 0. So if I run this, then we're going to have our hello world output here, which comes from this. And we're also going to look at the first character contained within this hello world variable, which is this H here. If we want to look at the second character, we can put in here a 1. If we want to look at the third character, we can put in here a 2, and so on. However, if we get out of range, for example, if we put in here 11, but actually we have 11 characters contained inside, but we start counting at 0, so the 11th index will actually refer to the 12th character. So this does not exist. And this is going to throw us an error that we can see here. The string index is out of range. So the string that we have here and the index that we're trying to refer to is bigger than the actual length of the string that we have. So what if we don't know how long our string is and we want to look at the last character? Well, one thing that we can do is we can use this -1, and that's going to look at the last character. So we can see here that's going to be the D from world. We can do -2, which is going to be the second last character, and so on. But right now we've just kind of looked at individual characters, and that may not always be super useful. How can we look at subsections? How can we look at substrings? So let's say we have this hello world, and I want to look at what the first 6 characters are. So that's going to be H-E-L-L-O space. So to look at the first 6 characters, we can say the index that we want to start at. We can say up to, but not including what index we want to go to, and then we can put our ending index. So let's say we want to look at the first 6 characters. We're going to go up to, but not including, so the second value here is always going to be up to, but not including the index 6. So So that means we're going to look at index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's going to be the first 6 characters. And if we run this, we can see here, well, there's actually a space here, which we can't really see. So maybe we look at the first 7 so that we also get the W from world. So we can see here we've been able to take a subsection. Now obviously, we don't just have to start at 0. We can also start at 1 and take from the first index up to but not including the 7th index, like this. And if we want to go all the way to the end, we can either go up to but not including -1. So that's going to be all the way except for the last thing. And if we want to go all the way to the end, then we can just have a colon here without a final index. And that means we're going to start at index 1 and we're going to go all the way to the end, like here. And something that we can also do like this, but kind of flipped around, if we want to take like the first 5, we can either do 0, 5 like this, but we can also shorthand it by just doing this. It's going to be the same thing. All right, so let me just clear my output here so that we have a fresh screen. Now, another cool thing that we can do, obviously, is when we have these subsections, we can also join them together. So for example, let's say we want to have hello world, which is going to take this part of hello world and it's going to join it together with, well, actually let's have hello LD. So we're going to have this section of hello. We want to keep the space, kind of how that indicated in our variable name, but it's obviously a little hard because we can't put spaces here. And then we want to have this L and D. So how can we use string slicing to basically get these substrings and have that result in this variable? So what we want is we want to go from the first character up to, but not including this W here. Now this W here is going to be our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's going to be the 7th character. So it's going to be the character with the index 6, which means we want to go up to and including 6, which means up to and not including 7. And then we want the L and the D here. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to take our hello world again, and we're going to go from the second last character all the way to the end. So we're just going to take the last 2 characters. Now if we print this out, and if we just Python 3.9 and we run our main program here, we can see, oh, looks like I included 1 extra character. I messed up on my counting here. Up to but not including 6. There we go. So we have LO space and then LD. So we're going from the first character up to but not including the 6th character, and then we're joining it together by starting at the second last character and going all the way to the end here. Now string concatenation is really nice because obviously sometimes if you have especially extremely big pieces of information, you want to be able to take subsections, or you want to be able to take out certain sub pieces of them and be able to reuse them. Now, what happens if we don't really know where a character is? What if we don't know the value contained inside here until we get it? What if there could be a bunch of junk and we basically want to start at the first H? So what we can do is use a really cool inbuilt function that comes with the strings. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new variable called hindex. And this is just going to give to us the position of the first H that we encounter. And we're going to use this hello world, then we're going to do dot index. Now don't worry too much about this because we're going to look at functions and methods as we kind of progress through this course. But this is just a tool right now that will give us the index of, well, whatever substring we put in here. Now I want to show you this now because we're going through strings, but again, later on we'll go through functions and also methods, and then it will probably be more clear to you what exactly is going on. But right now I just want to show you this functionality. So let's say we want to go and find the index of the first H. So if we print out our hindex variable, And we can see here that value is 0. If we want to print out the index of the first W, and we just change our variable name here to indicate that this is the index of the first W. Again, this is not a necessity, this is just for legibility. We can see here the index of the first W is 6, so it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we can even use substrings in here. So let's say we want to look at the index the first time, or where we first encounter hello, this substring. This is going to give us the index of where this substring starts. So we're going to say here hello index. This is going to be 1 because we found this substring here, and where it first starts is at index 1. Now if we add an extra L here, then we're not going to get a result because this value was not found within this string. ELLO does not exist within hello world. Now there are two cool more things that I want to show you, and these are going to be how we can change things to be full uppercase or full lowercase. So I'm just going to change this back to LLO so that we don't get an error like we have here. And we're going to say, all right, I want to have my hello world, but I want to have it all uppercase. How can I do this? Well, something like we had this index method here available, and again, don't really worry about it too much. There's also another cool thing that's available called dot, and you can already see my environment is kind of showing me all of the options available upper. And this will transform everything to uppercase. And if I print out the results, we can see here everything has been printed and changed to uppercase. And now if we want to switch everything to lowercase, I'm going to have here hello world uppercase. I'm going to switch the variable name to lowercase. I'm going to reuse, and I don't need to reuse the uppercase here, but I'm going to reuse it because our initial hello world here is actually all lowercase. Or actually, maybe it's better if I just add some random casing in here so that we can see the full effects, and we can also use this dot lower method. And then we print out hello world lowercase. We can see everything has been transformed to lowercase. Now obviously, as you already saw, when my environment was kind of doing this recommendations of things that I want to use, there are a bunch of different options available to us, and obviously I can't go through all of them, and a lot of the names will actually be self-explanatory almost to what they are doing. But there's so much cool flexibility that we have also with strings and being able to use and manipulate them. And strings are also going to be one of those core data types that we're going to be using a lot, because obviously text information is something that's very understandable to humans. And ultimately, at some point, we want to have text information because at the end of the day, that's what we're going to be reading and writing with.